everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jason Anderson, and I'm the Director of Programming here at the Kingston Canadian Film Festival. And I'm thrilled to be joined for one of our Q&A sessions by Rebecca Campbell, who's the Director of the Secret Society, which I think is a real highlight of this year's festival. If you have just viewed the film and are joining us, welcome. We hope you enjoyed the film. And God, there's a lot to take away from the film for sure. And if not, be sure to check out our digital platform to get a ticket. But again, we're very happy to have Rebecca to talk about the film. So thanks so much for sharing the film, first of all.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, and thank you for having my film at your festival. I'm excited to get it out there. There's a lot of information in there.
It is. I mean, there really is. I mean, it is definitely, one of those documentaries where, I mean, it's a topic that, for various reasons discussed in the film has been underground and sort of little known for all kinds of reasons and conditions. And once you start to see the rest of the iceberg, it's like, wow, this is something, And I guess, just to start talking, you have I think if people are interested, certainly your website for the film has a lot of really valuable resources and information too. And certainly you have a statement talking about kind of how you came to the subject. And if you're able to share, just sort of talk about how this became, I guess, it's obviously a very personal story for you.
Yeah, and the genesis of this film, I guess, was I had a friend who went through infertility. She did have a first child, but then she went through many miscarriages, and it was just heartbreaking to see her go through this. And I just wanted to help my friend out, and I knew that she was looking for eggs, and it just kind of so happened that I gave her my eggs, and it was a pretty easy decision at the time because I was just helping a friend. And once I started going through it and realized how involved it was, and then realizing, joining some of the Facebook groups and realizing how underground this topic is and how complex it is, I had no idea. It was an easy decision for me, but from that point on, I realized how complicated it was. And so from that point, I decided, we need to make a film on this. We need to hear people's stories.
Well, it is, and it really is one of these sort of examples, really kind of valuable. One of the most valuable things about documentary work is really like shedding light on the topic that is really, needs to be better known. And so much about this is, and also these experiences are so poignant and just that, and you're kind of, I guess what was the sort of part, I guess the beginnings for you for this sort of research, discovering all this experience that's going on, all these sort of, and again, this, happening kind of in the shadows because of the laws in Canada.
Yeah, it's so secretive, and that's where I got the title, is just because these women and men are living behind closed doors and suffering alone. And I also thought it was interesting as an egg donor to bring that perspective to the film, because that's not often talked about either. So this film is quite unique in the sense that, you do hear about infertility, not all the time, but very rarely do you hear about egg donation. And very rarely do you hear from egg donors as well. So this film, in a sense, is from my point of view as an egg donor, but it also follows the lived stories of those infertile couples and the egg donors as well.
So how did you begin the process of, essentially of casting the film, of finding the subjects? Because it's always, obviously, when people may not be, so willing to share, or just that, just because of the nature of what's going on and all these sort of legal issues.
That was the hardest part, is finding the people that wanted to share their stories. And I just kind of dove into it. First of all, I found Katie, who is an egg donor, and started video chatting with her back several years ago now. And just kind of sharing my experience as an egg donor with her and learning more about it, because she had donated more than once and helped, more than one family. And so from there, I started joining kind of the secret Facebook groups out there for infertility and for egg donation. And I kind of, I don't want to say lurked in there, but I kind of just stayed in there and listened and read these people's stories and the pain that they were going through. And I started reaching out to some people. And I think having come from the egg donor experience gave me a little bit of the credibility to be able to talk to them and to have them be open to sharing their story with me over social media. But they weren't always willing to share their story on camera, which is fair because it is a very personal story. So it took me definitely over a year to find some of my characters. And then on top of that, finding a way to film them at the stage in their journey that I needed to film them, and also to make things very complicated, trying to line up donors and infertile couples and matching their cycles that they're going through, because they cycle at different times. And if they're donating, just trying to match those women's cycles up together, it became quite complicated, not only to find these people, but then to be able, the timing of it is so sensitive to be able to capture that. So we just kind of, I just found the people who were willing to tell their stories and that wanted people to, you know, feel like they weren't alone.
Well, that's it. And the feeling alone, I mean, just thinking about, you know, fertility experiences and issues in my own life and friends' lives and families' lives. I mean, this is a very raw area for so many people. And it is sort of something that's a lot of this sort of secrecy and shame, even when things are not necessarily as kind of complex as, I mean, there's certainly this, I mean, it's definitely, to be open about any of this material, I think is it takes a lot of courage.
It does. And I commend all the characters in my documentary for being so courageous. And, you know, we were there for some of the most raw, most painful moments in their life, and they let us into their living room. And I'm forever grateful to them for sharing that so that other people can now know that they're not alone.
And so what was that? I mean, just from your perspective, I mean, obviously you had, you know, you do have a personal, you know, connection to some of you're not from the sort of remote outside position that sometimes filmmakers can be. But at the same time, I mean, what was the sort of process like for you kind of building that necessary trust? I mean, just because to kind of like to get to the place where these people are able to sort of, you know, have the camera in the room, or just, you know, all of that is just such a, it's a long process, I'm sure, to get to that point.
It absolutely was. Nothing about this was a short process, and gaining the trust of people. You know, it's about relationship building and sharing, you know, I was able to share my experience with them, and the woman who I helped, my friend, I was able to share her experience with them, and just to talk it through, and to meet them where they were at, and just to be real and honest with, you know, why I wanted to make the film, which was just to shed light on this complex topic.
And were there moments through the process as you're shooting that you were like, and I'm sure some of these moments are in the film and some of them are not, but just like, oh, wow, I'm here and this is happening. This is something that's actually unfolding in front of the camera, because that's documentary filmmakers, you know, look for that kind of experience, but that's a lot. It's definitely, it's an intense sort of moment for sure.
Yeah, it could be overwhelming at sometimes, but just kind of cycling through all of that and getting to the core of the story. I did find also having the access into the labs, not necessarily an easy thing to do, but it was very eye-opening, because having been an egg donor, you know, you don't really know what happens behind those closed doors all the time. And so I got to get up close and personal and see what a lot of people don't get to see.
Yeah, what's surprised you the most, or what are some of those things that you were like, wow, this is, you know, that's, I couldn't have imagined that, you know, the things that you discovered.
I think just the awe of life, you know, and the awe of science, and being able to experience, you know, up close and personal, the eggs and the sperm and the embryos, and just being really, just being kind of in awe of it all.
And it's something that just strikes me about the film too, is that that continual balance between, you know, what is possible on a kind of medical science level. These things are kind of unimaginable, even very recently, until very recently. And that all that stuff being continually sort of weighed against sort of like, you know, these fundamentally human aspects of our existence that have always been challenging, and are always just like, and to see kind of how we're confronted by these, you know, kind of almost sort of new variations and new wrinkles on some very, like, core questions about what it is to be human.
Absolutely. And I think something important that I learned through this process, although I always had, when I was making this film, I always had the child that I helped create with my eggs on my mind, thinking, what would she think of this when she grows up? But I think a lot of people do lose sight, as they're going through their own struggles and helping people going through their struggles, that these are human lives that are being made. And we also need to remember that donor conceived person. And so that's why topics like known donation are so important, because a lot of donor conceived people identify just like adopted kids would, and they're not necessarily looking for their genetic mother, but they're looking for where they came from and their identity and their birth story. So something I really learned through all of this is to, not take that portion of it lightly.
Oh, and that's it. And that's something that I think is really profound in the film too, is that there is just, we're in this process of trying to kind of be open and just to have this information to not be secret. I mean, it's really, as difficult as that is, and certainly you can see it had the impact in people's lives where it's like, it's important for them to have access to this. I mean, whether or not what they want to do with the information is a personal thing, but the thing is, like, as opposed to the struggle to find these things out, which is, this has been, for a long history of people not being able to know, is definitely what you're contending with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just so important to be honest always, and to make to make it a proud birth story instead of something that should be in the secret and in the shame. It shouldn't be for the infertile couple. It shouldn't be shameful for the donor, and it shouldn't be for the donor conceived person. And there's just so many aspects to consider, and my film just sheds light on some of that. It is a much, much bigger conversation, obviously.
Well, in terms of kind of creating that conversation, like, well, did you, certainly this is something that comes into the documentary practice too, but how much did you see the film as kind of a piece of advocacy, as a potential tool to change law, to change sort of like the sorts of a lot of the sort of stickier, more complex things and things that are kind of obviously obstacles to a lot of people too. Like, how much did you kind of see the film as a potential instrument for change?
When I started the film, I just sort of wanted to get a conversation started, and I saw it as a way to break the stigma and to shed light on the complexity of it. And I didn't really see it necessarily as advocacy, but when we started following the bill in Parliament to amend the Assisted Human Reproduction Act to decriminalize paying for a donor or a surrogate, I realized, the film did become more involved in that advocacy angle, because I don't think that criminalization is the answer to this problem. I think it's complex and there's so many things to weigh in, but criminalizing someone to build their family just maybe isn't the best way to do it.
Well, that's something I was thinking about too, is it really, even on sort of as looking at almost the people in the film as a sort of study in behavior and psychology, because it's fascinating when you have really people with the best of intentions, well-meaning, sensitive people forced to kind of do illegal things that are technically like against the law, and you realize like the kind of that the pressure that creates, where they're not people that no one has bad intention here, and yet they are kind of forced outside the law.
Oh yeah, it's a huge problem. It's what creates a lot of the secrecy and the shame. It is more complex than just that, but it definitely forces it underground and makes people feel like, they're criminals, which I guess sometimes technically they are considered, criminal. And that's just wild.
It is, and I hope that, exactly. I hope I hope the film does kind of change minds in that regard. I guess, and we're just to finish. I'd love to hear about your experience. The film, now that it's in the world and starting to kind of get seen, like what are some of the responses, or has the response been like? Both kind of by people who are kind of very close to the subject, and maybe people who are, again, very far from it and have had no idea this was happening.
Yeah, I just want to just clarify my last point too. It's not criminal in Canada to donate eggs. I donated my eggs altruistically, and I think sometimes there's confusion in that. It's if you paid $1 for it, even it can land you 10 years in jail or $500,000 in fines. So just to clarify, it's about the actual payment to a donor or a surrogate. But yeah, the response really has been, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I had no idea really what egg donation was. I had no idea how complex it was. I didn't know there was a law in Canada, that criminalized payment to donors for giving their eggs. Most people's response is just kind of shock and awe. And most people say, if they didn't go through infertility themselves, they know someone that did, because the statistics in Canada are 1 in 6 and globally 1 in 7. And so I think it's just amazing how much people can relate to this film and yet know nothing about the topic all at the same time.
That's beautiful. I think that's such a testament to the kind of, the courage of your subjects, but just, and the sort of specificity of it, like really does, to kind of, when you go that deep, you with the people in their lives in a film like this, people have all kinds of ways. I mean, people whose own experiences may have no connection are really they're the empathy, that's the poignancy that's created. It's really a testament to that.
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm sorry we don't have more time, but we're so, and I'm really looking forward to sharing the film and also to future films for you. So thanks so much for sharing the film with us and your experience.
Well, thank you so much to the festival. And I just want to also say a thanks to TELUS Originals and TELUS Fund, who are supporting important complex health issues and female filmmakers. So thank you to all of you for your support.
Great. And I want to thank our viewers and welcome them back for more of our films and our Q&A sessions from now till March 13th. There's plenty of other videos and lots of interviews with filmmakers in town. So thanks to everyone, and thanks again to Rebecca.
Thank you.